Top of the day, everybody. It's your boy Big Sing on the beat as always. And this message is out to my Hispanic folks because, again, I'm still seeing these videos and still hearing folks wondering where we're at, you know. And the thing is that you have to understand is that we're with you, always have been, you know, in a great sense. As we have paved the way for a lot of immigrants and a lot of people to come from different parts of the world to here, as we fought the way to be here, you know. So when a person have done all that type of work, it's almost like bringing a friend into a facility where you work at, and you know, you made it possible for this person to get a job and the whole nine, and they go and spit in your face, you know what I mean? Don't show up in the whole nine, etc. and etc. And it's like, you know, when we were fighting the fight, nobody showed up really, you know, to help us with the fight, except those that were tired of the discrimination, you know, and things that we were facing back in those times. You know, we had some great white folks, we had some great Hispanics, but it hasn't been flooded, you know, at that point with Hispanics, you know, back in, you know, California, for an example, and some other places as they had been pushed out, you know. This is actually you guys' homes as well. A lot of blacks do not understand that, you know, for the reason why a lot of the street names are Hispanic, you know. So we've always had an open heart. At least I have, and the people I hang around with, you know, from my next door neighbor, you know, growing up back in the day, my boy Bernardo and my boy Oso, you know, Mr. Mendoza, and you know what I mean, and so many more. You know, I got Korean friends. You can check my page. You know, Asians and people from Filipinos, people from all different type of nationalities, because my father was in the construction business. You know, and so, you know, they didn't have no discrimination on the job. You know, my pops had a birthday, man. Everybody pitched in, and you know, and that's when I learned not to have that type of hatred in my heart, you know. And a lot of folks went out and they had that type of hatred in their heart, you know what I mean? And you selected a president that had hate in his heart, you know, so therefore you suffer the consequences thereof, you know. You suffer the consequences thereof, you know. Nobody picked based on true merit, you know, of being a true American, you know, since they want to mention merit. Y'all went and got an actor, you know what I mean, to be your president, because he was in Will Smith's Little Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We thought he liked black people, but he don't. You know, if you go look him up right now on Google, you'll see what he likes and what he don't like, you know what I mean? So do your research is what a lot of people didn't do, you know what I mean? But you can still do it now, because time will come again where it's time to elect someone else, you know what I mean? And again, you don't want to elect someone based on money, you know, what they're giving you. You know, you got to know if that's bait or not, you know what I mean? In this case, it was bait, you know what I mean? At least you guys thought that he was the big mastermind behind it all. Again, you got to do your research on that, you know what I mean? So it's not that we not trying to fight this fight. This is that, you know, it's tiresome, you know, after you constantly fight. And if you watch the news and read, you'll hear that in advance, you know, the elections were going to be tampered with, you know what I mean? And that was to discourage a lot of people from getting out there to go vote, you know, but a lot of people did, you know. And for the millions that were thrown in the trash, you know, you mean you're telling me that you wanted another million to come in and make this, you know, an even fight, you know what I mean? You know, it's a lot of work, you know, it's a lot of work, you know. So, but we're getting up there, we're getting out, and we're fighting this fight with you, because now a lot of us have no choice, you know, as they're taking Medicaid away and taking food stamps away, and they even want to, since there are no more farmers out there, you know, due to this immigration that they've just started up, mass immigration they started up, excuse me. So they don't have nobody to work their farm. So now they want to try to come up with this big idea to take people off of food stamps and Medicaid or whatnot, those that are able-bodied, you know, and there's a lot of them that are not, you know, as they're having a fight with Social Security, trying to get on disability because they're, you know, they're injured or they hurt themselves at work or in a car accident or whatnot. A lot of those people are on them. So I don't know how they're going to go about trying to figure out who's an able body, who's not an able body, or are you just going to assume that because everybody is on food stamps, all these people are on Medicaid, you know, that they can get off their bottoms and go ahead to work, you know. So, and that's a sad thing that you have people that don't want to work in that hot heat, you know, and those farmers, you was taking advantage of those people, you know, that were over here illegally and they had no choice to work. You know, that's another form of slavery. And, you know, so they get what they deserve in a great sense, you know what I mean? All these years you had ample time to put roofing up, you know, over your crop. You know, there are places there where they have, you know, as almost they have for parking structures, you know what I mean, where you park up under type of thing, little overheads for those people to be comfortable, you know, and out of the heat, you know what I'm saying? So they wouldn't damn near feel like they're dying just trying to make pay, you know what I mean? You know, that's crucial and unfair, you know, even if, you know, even them being over here as immigrants, you know, this is the thing how they was taken advantage of, you know, that's messed up, you know, so they kind of get what they deserve, you know what I mean? They could have made a pact with these people to try to get them legalized as they were working over here, trying to become citizens in the first place. But they paid them so low, today was just, you know, working to make ends meet and basically starting over again the next day, you know, just enough to pay bills, enough to help or something like that at home, but not even enough to take care of a home in some situations. So you have to have someone else or maybe even a house full so you can have money in your pocket and do the things you dream of, you know. You know, but this is all systemic racism that you guys encounter, and now you're about to see it from our point of view. You know, you're seeing it now how we had to deal with it. You know, your marches are going out there, you know, you guys going out there are not in vain. You know, if you go back, you see that we've done a lot of marches, you know, not just a Million Man March, you know, it goes back hundreds of years, you know. People don't understand what protesting does. Well, this is what it does, you know, it helps awareness. It helps bring the young in as they're out there lost, you know, but they're still like sponges, so they can take and soak up this game and understand politics, you know, understand where we're at in the world as a minority, you know, as they want to call it. You know, I still believe that we are large and great, better than what we believe as they give us their statistics, their numbers, you know, their percentages, you know. We've been out here too many years and too long and have been making way too many kids. And just like Hispanics, you know, we're in the same boat, you know, so I don't believe in their numbers, you know. If you make a person think that they're small in numbers and you constantly keep hammering that into their heads, then they're going to believe that they're small and there's no sense or no reason to fight them, you know. But one thing about the Hispanic world, they know that they're large. You know, and we got to believe that same thing and get back out there and fight with them and, you know, fight for what we believe in, you know, if we really want to be here. If not, we just need to go ahead and pack up and go to some place to where we're really appreciated, you know, and stop trying to fight and be somewhere where we're not wanted, you know what I mean? So that's another way to look at all this as well. You know, if there was a deport me right now, you know, in ways I would care because I got family here, but in ways I wouldn't because I don't feel comfortable here. You never have, you know, in great sense that, you know, I've gone to Atlanta, for an example, and man, it's so welcoming, you know. People know you ain't from there, so, you know, it's like right off the bat, but when they hear your story and they hear that you're not from there and whatnot, you know, they just still welcoming, you know what I mean, and loving and kind, you know what I mean, wish to help you out in kind of ways, you know. You might be stuck in the middle of the street trying to start your car, but you got a brother that's going to pull up, you know, and assist you and give you some help, you know what I mean? And it may be, you know, I've experienced it with Hispanics, you know, in California. I've gotten more help from them than I've gotten from my own people stalled in traffic. And it's because we lost that togetherness. If we go back home, we see how together our people are, we'll learn that it's better to be that way than to be segregated, you know, using gangs as a way to stay segregated, you know, looking at race as a way to stay segregated. You know, there's some races, man. There's multicultural races, man, and a lot of countries that you don't know about because one, they don't want you to know, but then again, you got to delve into the thing, you know, and understand that there's some other things going on in the world. We still got indigenous tribes, man, you know, that are not modernized. They don't mess around with this way of living. You know what I mean? They're distant from this, and they don't wish no part of it. You know, you like, how, man? You know, Jerry, you got the Nikes, you got the Jordans. These people didn't walk barefooted all their lives, man, or in slippers, flip-flops, or whatever you may call it. They done hardened their feet, became callous. I mean, some of this is part of true naturalism. You know what I mean? The way life was intended to be. You know, we've gotten, you know, spoiled with all this, you know, this clothing and wearing it, you know, and all that. I mean, not to just go off into that, but, you know, it just lets us, I'm trying to let you know, man, that we have options. You know, we don't have to be somewhere where we're not wanted, you know. You can live in some places the way you want to live, you know, off the grid, where you ain't got to answer to nobody, you know. But people feel like they have to be a part of this modernized bullshit. And I hate to say it like that, but that's what it is, you know. Somewhere in the world there's people living, man, in made homes that they made by hand, and they're happy. You know, their family is getting along. You know, they ain't mad because somebody didn't send them no cash. You know what I mean? Your kids can play with a set of rocks that you didn't made up a game for, and they were happy with that. You know what I mean? Picking fruits from anywhere that they walked around. You know, things that we've been robbed from. You know, it used to be fruit trees everywhere. You know, you can grab a kumquat off a tree, an orange, an apple as you walk down the street, or walk down the field, road, whatever you want to call it back then, and nobody got mad, upset because they were able to do the same thing as they walked down your side of the block, you know. So maybe there's a lot of things we need to think about, you know, as I'm talking about all these things, you know, for the blacks and for the Hispanics, you know what I mean, to free ourselves, you know, as we're trying to fight this fight of being here in America, you know. But my whole thing is to let you know, again, you're not alone in this fight. You know, we have to fight with you. And at this point, nobody has a choice, you know, whether it's white, black, Hispanic, Filipino, Chinese, it doesn't matter at this point now because they're going after everybody's Medicaid, Medicare, EBT, SNAP benefits, you know, and so at this point, and also going after, you know, federal jobs, you know, it's just been a whole lot of calamity going on, you know. So, and there's a lot of people moving out of the U.S. And you got to go on YouTube and check it out. You know, a lot of people are fed up, you know, in the way that this world is ran. And now that, you know, you want to have King Trump here in office, nobody wants to deal with dictatorship, you know, so they're moving on out, you know, and experiencing, like in South Africa, you picture, and you hear the word Africa, you picture people out there, you know, homeless, flies on them, and it's none of that. It's totally a whole new world, you know. They're doing great out there.